So I wrote a piece for my newsletter about a summit that was held in Washington, D.C. to try to devise the future of the internet. So let me talk a little bit about that. The summit was organized by an organization called Project Liberty. Project Liberty has been trying to figure out a new protocol for the social web. Basically, right now, social media is owned by big companies primarily, and those big companies control your data. So you use the platform, you give them your data, and then they use that data to sell advertising or to partner with third parties or and do a number of different things. And so basically, we're giving them free material that they can use to make lots of money. So the idea behind Project Liberty, which is run by a guy named Frank McCourt, who's a billionaire, former owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers, was to create a new protocol where you, using social media, would own your data. So your data is not being used by companies to make money that you don't see, but rather you own the data and you can figure out how to monetize it in conjunction with the companies. Now, this is not a unique idea to Frank's. Other people have been working on this, but he's a billionaire, so he's got a lot of resources to put behind it. You would own your data, you could use that data to monetize, enter into partnerships with the companies. There's some details that have not been ironed out. There's a lot of education that would happen around this, but that's the general principle. And one of the ways that he wants to scale this is by acquiring TikTok. So he's got a bid called the People's Bid to buy TikTok if TikTok is forced into sale by the incoming administration. By the time you watch this video, that may have already happened, or it may have been delayed by the Supreme Court. Unclear what will happen with TikTok. So the idea of this summit in Washington was to bring people together to talk about what the future of the internet could look like. There were content creators there were technologists there, VC companies, investors, people developing new apps. Let me talk about my takeaways from this summit. So I wrote about this in the piece. Basically, my takeaways are the following. One, people who built the internet that we currently have are not going to build the future version of the internet. There were a lot of internet legends there, people like Vint Cerf, for example, um, who were foundational to the way the internet began and scaled. But that's not the people who are going to build and lead us in the 21st century. So we're looking for a new generation of builders. Number two, I think we need to center the voices of content creators in the future of the web. The content creators who are there are the ones that we need to be listening to in terms of how is the web going to work best for them. If they're going to create content online, how are they going to get compensated for it? How are they going to retain their intellectual property? How are they going to be shielded from abuse and harassment? How is it going to affect things like disinformation and misinformation? What are the monetization schemes that the platforms that can come up with to help creators better? I think the creators have a much better sense of these questions than the builders do. My third takeaway was just I was surprised at how little future casting there really was. People who were pitching new projects were pitching projects that sounded very much like old projects. People said they had a new version of TikTok or a version of Twitter X that wasn't as toxic or wasn't as this or wasn't as that. I kept thinking to myself, do we really need another social media app? Is that what the world is crying out for? Or is that just what people think investors want to hear? Because ultimately, if you're going to get these things off the ground, you need investors to come in. And maybe investors are just conservative in terms of what types of platforms and ideas they want to fund. You look at something like Blue Sky, which is having a moment right now. The CEO of Blue Sky was one of the speakers. And, that was kind of held up as a model of what could be done with a new iteration of the social web. But it still really feels like the social web that we currently have. It doesn't feel new. Maybe that's just how these things work. Maybe it has to be iterative, not evolutionary, not revolutionary. But I didn't really feel like in a room full of technologists and builders that there was a lot of like real creative forward thinking about what the internet would look like. It seemed like everybody was still kind of grasping at straws, trying to figure it out. Maybe that's kind of the beauty of these events is that it brings people together to do that. And then my last takeaway is I just think that we need to put so much more emphasis on education when we have these conversations. I mean, there are people today who still don't really know how the internet works, how the web works, why they see certain content in their newsfeed, how the companies make money, what happens to their data. So now we're going to try to build a new protocol that everybody's supposed to hop on and they're going to have ownership of their data. Well, what does that mean, ownership of your data? What does that mean practically? What does that mean for you as a user? What do you have to navigate? What do you actually have to understand in order to not only have your data in your possession, take it with you from platform to platform, but then also use it in a way that you can earn some monetization or some reap the benefits somehow of the way the social media companies work. So I just think there needs to be so much more education invested in this, and people are not really interested in that, right? They're interested in building a product, scaling it, and then exiting or taking it public or whatever the sort of model is for building, scaling, and making a profit. But education is not that. So where is that education piece going to come from? Is it going to be content creators making it? And in which case, who's going to compensate them for their time and effort? Um, is it going to be YouTube? Is it going to be Coursera? And, these are a lot of questions that I have, and I just think that we need some philanthropists who are willing to step up and actually invest in education in alongside people investing in companies. At one point during the summit, they asked us um, to write bullet points about what we think the future of the internet should include. So after some reflection, here are my 5 bullet points. One, the future of the internet must integrate critical historical analysis into its creation. We have to be critical about how the internet was built to this point so that we can use that critical reflection to make a better internet. Number two, the future of the internet must foster critical thinking, historical literacy, and media literacy among its users, right? Imagine a web and social media that isn't based on knee-jerk reaction, but is actually built in speed bumps along the way to help you be a more critical and reflective thinker about what you see. Number three, the future of the internet must center the diverse voices of creators and be responsive to their desires, needs, and concerns. Creators have to be at the center of this. They are powering the web. They will power the web in the future. Their concerns, their monetization, their business models have to be at the forefront of what gets created. Number four, the future of the internet must empower and reward humanists, ethicists, historians, and other humanities scholars, in addition to enriching technologists and investors. To me, the internet cannot just be a commercial space. It cannot only be dominated by commercial actors. There have to be humanistic operators inside this environment that are promoting things other than just clicks, views, shares, and profit. If the future of the internet is just about commercial gains and commercial ends, I think that we do ourselves a disservice. My last point, number 5, for every $1 we spend on tech, we should spend $3 on education. I've actually said this in a variety of contexts, whether it be $3 educating people or $3 upskilling people or $3 making sure that people understand the new version of the web that they're going to get. For all the money that's being put into VCs and investors and startups, we need to be tripling that when it comes to the education. So you can read the full piece on my newsletter, but that was my takeaways from the summit. And I don't know what's going to happen with Project Liberty. I don't know what's going to happen with TikTok, but I'm still trying to make sure that humanists and historians and people who think a little bit differently are part of these conversations when we're talking about what the future of the web and social media will be.